right, everyone. Welcome to Rhythm and Roads podcast. I'm your host, Joshua Jacob. We have a special guest, Tim Searfoss, writer and director of One Second at a Time and the Break Every Chain, which is one of my favorites. Yeah. So welcome, sir. Welcome back to Rhythm and Roads.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, man. So I was aware of the One Second at a Time that it won 61 awards. Is that right?
Yeah, something like that.
Oh my God, congratulations, man. Jeez.
Yeah, it's doing really well.
That's awesome. How's it doing right now? Like, where is it at?
Let's see. I think we just won an additional three, I think, within the past 2 weeks. So yeah, I'm losing track.
So that's already like 64.
Yeah, yeah.
Gonna hit that 100 or something or what?
I don't know. It's
Is that
nuts.
possible?
I have no idea.
Man, that's awesome. I gotta say this film, when I watched it, it was so well done. The directing, the story. I mean, the story is just it's really sad, but it's true of just people out there going through addiction of drugs, alcohol, different addiction of different things. But man, like, is this based on a true story or is this fiction of someone that they're just showing an example of someone out there that people go through this?
Yeah, one second at a time is the name of the doc, and battling the monster of addiction. Yeah, it's based on a true story, and it's I live out here in Tampa, so it's somebody that I met out here in Tampa, and it's a father and who his daughter lost. His daughter battled substance abuse for a long time and had kind of a crazy story. And it was the story. It's also the story of a lot of people who suffer with substance abuse, a lot of parents who have to deal with that. So it was a unique perspective, from it being from the dad's point of view.
Wow.
Um,
So you actually met the gentleman that was you brought him in the film, right? I believe that was
yes.
okay.
Mhm.
Wow. That yeah, that story of just what she went through, it's something from you see her the way that she is from, I mean, she was really good at like very athletic, grades and all that. And then she went from this side of her life of a chapter that just like, wow, that went downfall pretty bad. Um,
Yeah,
so
like I said, it's so common of a story because people who battle substance abuse, there's patterns that emerge.
yeah.
And in doing the film, we started to learn more about that. So for me, it was I didn't really grow up with around substances, and I didn't really know what that was like, or growing up with somebody who struggled with substance abuse. So this was new territory for me,
Wow.
and it was very educational. And at the end of the doc, I just walked away with this understanding that I didn't have before, and it really changed my perspective on. It changed my perspective on people, and I was, in the doc, we say it starts out with the dad saying, before he used to think, he'd see like somebody on the side of the road and he'd say, why doesn't that guy just get a job?
Oh yeah.
That guy's a bum, and that kind of thing. And then at the end of the film, you get to the point to where he says, well, now I see their faces. I see who they are. I see, and that I was the same way when I started out. I was that person, hey, why didn't that guy just get a job? Why doesn't, he's just a bum, that kind of thing. And you don't really think about those people. And then going through it, you realize, hey, that could be anybody, that could be anybody. And you realize that the way they got there, nobody sets out to be that person. Nobody sets out to be at that point. And then you discover that a lot of these people are, doctors, athletes, people that were very successful
Uh,
and just they got hit by something, and I think the biggest takeaway for the film was this idea of trauma. So the role that trauma plays in someone's life, and this was for me, that was the biggest lesson that I learned because it affected how I viewed everyone, all of my relationships, even my own self. You start looking at, the role that trauma plays, and we go pretty deep into it in the doc, and of course the doc is cinematic, right? It's not just a regular,
yeah, yeah, that's
doc.
good.
It's a yeah, it has that cinematic vibe. So
Yeah, yeah.
so we so exploring this theme of like this idea of trauma was
Yeah.
was really important. And it was so eye-opening when you begin to realize that people who, when things happen, like for instance, they call them adverse childhood experiences. They're called ACEs. And basically, when you're a kid, if certain things happen to you, let's say you have a loss of a parent, incarcerated parent, you physical abuse, verbal abuse, sexual abuse, all these things. And the more of these that you start stacking on to a child,
Yeah.
the more and more likely they become to be someone who's going to abuse substances. And it's almost statistical. I mean, it's almost a math formula.
Yeah.
And the problem is that usually we don't identify those things in a child, or we don't really pay attention to those things and we don't address them. It can be reversed, but you just have to catch it early. You have to be aware that it's there. So
Yeah.
this story is about a dad who didn't know anything about that. And here his daughter's growing up and he's going, what is wrong with her? How can I fix her? What can I do? And he's throwing everything he can to try to fix her, when really it was these core things. And that was the biggest education for me, was that people, the reason they do drugs for the most part is because it's a medicine. It's a medicine. They have a wound in their heart. They don't know how to fix it. And taking these substances for a moment alleviates that pain, the guilt. It alleviates all these things for a moment, even if it's just a little bit. And they can basically silence their demons,
Right.
in a sense. And because of that, that's why people, and so that helped me really understand, why people do it. And that was one of the big things that I wanted to really communicate in the documentary, was that idea.
It's very interesting that you mentioned that, because it is true that it may not even be led to drugs. It could be led to alcoholism. It could be led to other sources, but it's true. Like, and I used to be one of those too, not all the time, but every now and then, yeah, you would see someone, you're like, why don't they just get a job? They look okay. They look like they can. But like you said, sometimes it goes deeper than that. What really happened in their life? What really went on growing up when they were a kid? Like you said, there's probably people out there that used to be successful, um, doctors, athletes, just who knows, So it's true what you said. Like, you look at now that you realize the face, you're like, what's behind in here? What's really happened in their life? But wow, that's true, and it does change my perspective on that, because yeah, it's not good that you would want these, the people on the streets to do drugs, but the thing is, they're trying to find something to, like you said, relieve their demons, to relieve that quietness just for a bit. And that's why I'm hoping, there'll be missionaries out there or people from churches to go and minister to them, let them know that drugs, alcohol, all that is not the answer. Jesus is the answer, and he's the one that's going to save you through that, through
Yep.
your heartache, through that. And yes, sometimes it's good to go for counseling and therapy and all that, especially if there's been deep wounds that you've been through growing up, or things that have happened to you. But in the end, Jesus, the only one that can really heal you, save you 100%. And there's been a lot of testimonies of people um wanting to commit suicide or something. All of a sudden, someone, God reached out to them before they did it, just to say, hey, like, I have still a plan for you. This is not it.
Well, Break Every Chain is like that. So
Yeah,
Break
that's
Every
right.
Chain.
Yeah.
So Break Every Chain, even though Break Every Chain is a real is a film, but it's the true story of this police officer. And it was interesting how, doing this doc helped me even understand more the Jonathan Hickory story.
Yeah,
And
there you go.
and
Yeah.
there, Jonathan Hickory, he experienced trauma, but he experienced childhood trauma. He had his dad die of cancer.
Mhm.
And then he experienced trauma at his job, right? And it was repeated, it was constant. He's a cop, he's seeing things. That trauma, if it's not dealt with, it starts to eat you up. And it's this darkness that you can't get rid of. And if you're not a Christian, you don't know what to do with it. You don't know what to do with it. So because of that, what does he do? He starts self-medicating, right? He
That's
takes
true.
alcohol. So
Drugs,
he's drinking
alcohol,
and he's
yeah.
drinking. And that's why first responders, it's such a big issue for first responders, because they have that. They deal with the darkest parts of humanity, and they don't have an answer. They don't have a way and escape. They don't have a solution to this problem.
Right.
It just eats you up, and only when you're a Christian can you start to let it go and say, hey, look, I can't control these things.
Yeah.
This is all in God's hands.
Yeah.
And so yeah, so that's a perfect example of what you're talking about, and that's also an example. Now, so for instance, we were shooting in Boston. This didn't make the documentary, but we went to Methadone Mile in Boston,
Oh, okay.
and and to paint you a picture, we go to this place, and it looks like what you'd think it was almost like a refugee camp, or something, in the US.
Wow.
It's weird,
Really?
tents, and people just out, and you literally step out and people are just shooting up right in front of you. They don't care,
Oh my
shooting their
God.
hands, arms, feet, wherever,
Yeah.
and we approach this woman, and hey, will you tell us your story? And she starts telling us her story, and she says, um and she starts crying, and she says, I was a mother of 4 kids. I was working on my master's in counseling.
Wow. Are you serious?
She's married, working as a yeah, and she got hooked on drugs, and it completely derailed her. She's like, I'm homeless now. I haven't seen my children, and
Wow.
and she's just in tears, and she can't get out of it. And I think one of the most frustrating things about this is that we can't fix the other person. And that's what another big lesson, and that you discover in the doc, is that you can try as hard as you can. You can do all the things, you can set up all the parameters,
Yeah.
but it has to be their decision.
Yes.
And if they don't decide it, it's never going to happen. And that's the tragedy of it. That's the tragedy of it, because you have to, and of course, another lesson was that this dad, when he finally decided, hey, you know what? I've been enabling her. Let me stop enabling her. So when he stops enabling her, that's when she hits rock bottom. She's like, before, dad's paying the bills, dad's
Yeah,
doing
that's
this,
true.
doing
I know
that.
that. Yeah.
And the moment that he cuts her off, now she's on her own. And that moment was a pivotal moment, because she hit rock bottom.
Yeah.
And when she hit that, and that's kind of like that tough love, thing.
Right.
So when she hit rock bottom, she's going, what am I doing here? I shouldn't be here. What is wrong with me? And she ultimately ended up becoming sober for many years,
Yeah.
because of that moment. But yeah, that's one of the tragedies, one of the most painful things is just that you're watching your loved one just spiral out of control, and you can't do anything about it. You're so powerless.
Yeah. If you can remind me what happened from that point that you said she was like sober for like 3 years and or a few more, or I forgot how many years.
Yeah, it was for a
Oh,
few years, and she
yeah.
actually started working in recovery. She started
Oh,
helping
that's right.
people.
Yeah.
She was in her 20s, and she got engaged. And I mean, her life was coming back, and she just fell right back into it. And it was, a lot of times with people who are battling addiction, when they go back even harder than they did before. And that's what happened in her case. She went back, and
Harder.
it was really bad, and it went to a really dark place. And it was because what happens is they call it, so I guess to help understand the situation. So you have these childhood traumas, right, as a kid, and inevitably somebody offers you something that will help you alleviate that, right? So
Right.
usually it's like pot, or whatever it is, pills, and then you take it, and you're like, oh man, that does make me feel better. Now at some point though, it gets harder to get that stuff. So now you've had to do something to get what it is you need, because you're kind of hooked on it now. So maybe you steal from mom and dad, right? Well, now you're kind of feeling sorry that you stole from them. Now you need to take medication to forget that you stole from dad to do what you just did, right? And then it gets worse. And then the things that you keep doing, and the circle of people, now you're getting around people who are bad people, who are going to take advantage of you. And then the worse and worse these things happen, it's like a death spiral. So
Yeah.
now you're medicating not for the trauma that you had before, but the trauma that you had yesterday, the trauma that you've had the past month, the trauma you've had, and it's a death
Oh,
spiral.
yeah. It's just piling up. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's a death spiral, and also because drugs are usually an isolation thing that people get in their heads, and they get So a lot of research has gone into this was something we wanted to put in the doc, but we didn't end up having enough time to do it. But there's this fascinating study about rats, and they did this rats. I think it's called the rat study. And they did this experiment. They took a rat that was addicted to I think it was cocaine or something like that. It was addicted to some kind of really bad drug and methamphetamine. I can't remember what it was. And they take this rat and I'm sorry. Let me back up. They take a rat, they put him in a cage by himself, and they
Okay.
give him water, and then they give him like meth or it was some kind of really bad drug.
Yeah.
And the rat is in there, and he drinks the water, and then he drinks the drug, and then he starts taking the drug, and then he becomes addicted. And
Wow.
he's addicted to the drug, right? So then what they did was they took this rat and they put it in what they called rat park. It was a big giant area with lots of other rats, lots of places where they can like run, exercise, and they
Yeah.
had the same two bottles, the bottle of water and the bottle with the whatever the drug was.
Yeah.
And this rat, when it was put in a community with all the other rats, became not an addict anymore. And
Wow.
and none of the rats that were in Rat Park, that was what it was called, it's a Rat Park study. None of the rats that were in there became addicts, even though they had access to the drugs. So the idea is that connection is a key component. And so I think there's a book about it. And it's called I think if I'm remembering correctly, it's something like connection is the opposite of addiction. So
Mm.
that's the concept, that's the idea. So a big part of it is because they're in this place of shame and guilt, and also the stigma of us looking from the outside in and going, we don't want to have anything to do with you,
Yeah.
right? Because of that, they end up being isolated, which makes it even worse. So they say that like if you have community, if you can put community, that's why these support groups work usually really well, because they're around other people. They
True.
can
Okay.
talk and they can
Right.
share their the communal experience of what
Yeah.
it's like, and they can encourage each other. And so why that's one of those integral parts to achieve that sobriety.
Wow, that's interesting. I did not even know there was a test like that for the rats that they could see. That's interesting. Wow. That's true. That kind of makes sense. Like you said, when you're in like one of those AA meetings or something, and you go with a group, you kind of help relieve that, and it helps everyone to get out of that because they're doing it together. Yeah. You think this could also be for like anger problems, like anger management?
Yeah, I think all addictions usually come
Yeah.
from the same place.
Same
They're
place.
all so it's and they have and also depending on how much trauma you experienced, kind of depends on how you cope with it. Every person copes different ways. Some people don't go so far as to doing that, but
Yeah.
there are what they call process addictions, like video games. That could be a
Oh,
process
wow. No way.
addiction.
Okay.
There's a lot of process addictions that people do, that the reason they do them is because, hey, they don't realize it. I mean, it was very interesting because even in my own life, I didn't realize what I had, the trauma that I had been suffering.
Really?
Only after was I able to look at it and look at people, and suddenly I understood why some of my family or whatever behaved the way they did, and it
Wow.
suddenly opened my eyes to say, oh, you know what, that is their coping mechanism for the trauma they experienced.
Wow.
And so a
Okay.
lot of times the trauma you experience as a child and the way you coped with that is how you cope with stress when you're an adult. And maybe you weren't one of those people that had a lot of aces. Maybe you had a few, but the way you cope with that. So anger is one of those. Anger is definitely one of those. Usually comes from trauma, and it's a coping. They've kind of realized. I mean, I haven't done research on, but I'm assuming it has a lot to do with like how they figured out how to deal with what happened to them is to get angry
Yeah.
and to get that way they can get the results they want.
Right.
But yeah, it's very fascinating.
It is. And kind of like thinking of it as of now with like social media, I know that that could be also an addiction, which I've had to kind of when I first started with like MySpace, Facebook, I had to really watch myself because sometimes you get so caught up in how many people liked my stuff, how many followers do I have, and you get so caught up on trying to pursue that so much that if someone doesn't like it or doesn't, show interest, you start to feel down about yourself. You're like, what? Like, what did I do? Like, why is it not? You know what I mean? And I've heard a lot of like horror stories of people taking their lives because someone commented on them and said something making fun of them, and everyone got the word on that, and then now they're like, they were embarrassed from the whole area of their community because of it. It's just sad.
Yeah.
'Cause there's people that are very like stuck on that, and it's just sometimes you got to just kind of hold back and be like, I can't let this consume me. What's your
Well,
thoughts?
it's the same parts of the brain. So it's the
Yeah.
same parts of the brain, those dopamine hits that you get from social media.
When
That's
so
what it is. It's the
yeah,
same thing. Those dopamine hits are hitting somebody who's an addict. Now, usually if somebody's like on harder drugs, what happens is that the drugs do give you that dopamine hit, but the dopamine hit is so much greater than your body produces.
wow.
So what happens is the high is so high that when they get off of it, it's like their wires are all messed up. It's like almost like you've been listening to the music at, 10 the entire time, and suddenly I need you to listen to it at 1. You're like, well, I can't hear anything. And that's kind of how it is for them. It's like they don't experience the dopamine hit of like your wife saying, hey, you look good today, or your job, where they say, hey, you did a good job today, or those hits don't happen. I mean, it takes a while for it to reset. It does eventually reset.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's the same. They've done studies on the brain, and they've realized that um, all of these things, they are the same part of the brain, and they can actually see them in MRI scans.
Are you serious? They can see that?
Yeah.
Oh
hmm
wow. That's interesting. So from that social media part, what's your thoughts on that? Is that part of the same thing too? Of
Well, it can be. That's a process addiction, So that is something that definitely people use as a coping mechanism. Okay, well, my life is, I have things that I don't want to deal with my life, so I'll get on here, and it helps me forget about it, right? And it helps
Well,
me
yeah,
to
it's true.
tune
Yeah,
out and zone out, and
going out.
and there's everyone has their, I think older people go, you're on the internet or whatever, but they do it too. They'll do the
Yeah.
television, or whatever it is. And it's like everyone has the thing that, that affects you, in your way. I mean, obviously there's nothing wrong with video games, right? Obviously there's nothing wrong with social media, but it's that when it flips to the side where it becomes a coping mechanism. Now it becomes, hey, you're doing it too much because
Right.
you don't want to
Addiction.
deal with certain things of your life, or whatever it is. So that is yeah,
Interesting.
there's some interesting studies, and like I said, it's very eye-opening once you start to explore that. But going back to what you said about God being the solution. So one of the really tragic things was we spoke to someone, and it was somebody who's like a head of a recovery center,
Oh,
and
okay.
asked them, I said, well, what do you tell people? What do you tell them when they tell you that that they're addicted, and all that? And they said, well, what we tell them is, and you'll, from a Christian standpoint, you're going to find this interesting.
Okay.
They said, well, what we tell them is that there's a voice in your head that's telling you to use the substances, and that voice is not you. That voice is the voice of the addiction, of the substance. That voice is not you, and you don't have to listen to that voice. And you need to tell that voice that they're not in control, that you're in control. And as a Christian, I'm going like, wait a minute, we have but it's kind of sad because they don't have the tools to battle this. So
Yeah.
so it became very clear to me that Christianity, what it does is, we're talking about all the things we talked about. So you have childhood trauma, right? When you become a Christian, God says to you, he says, you know what? All those things that happened to you, I'm going to take them away.
You're right. Yeah.
Forget about it. You can forget about it, because I'm going to forget about it. I'm going to take it and I'm going to throw it into the ocean.
Right.
And he says, all those things that you've done that were wrong, I'm going to take all of those.
Yeah.
Everything you've done wrong, I'm going to take it and I'm going to forget about it and throw it away. I'm going to give you a blank slate, you
Yeah.
know? And he says, and you know, you don't have an identity right now. You feel like your identity, you don't know what it is. I'm giving you an identity. Your identity is that you were created by God
Yeah.
for a purpose. You're
Yep.
not a monkey. You're not an accident. You're
Yep.
not whatever that trauma you had when you were growing up and your parents telling you, you know, you're useless, you're worthless. You're none of those
Yep.
things.
You're not.
You are beautifully made, you know, wonderfully and beautifully made.
Yep.
Um, and not only that, but then God says, and I have a purpose for you.
That's
You know,
right.
I want you to do something with your life. I want you to make, you know, do better.
Yep.
And God is the only solution to all of these issues that we have as humans. You know, the things that, you know, it's battle scars, you know, in many ways, it's battle scars.
Yeah.
And God, and it became very clear that you are not going to get that um, healing any other way, you
Yeah.
know, any other way. And that's why I think Christianity offers a really, you know, beautiful solution, beautiful answer. Now it's a tough battle.
Oh,
That's why we called it battle of addiction, battling the monster of addiction.
yeah.
This is not by any means a band like a thing that you just, oh, you just flip the switch, oh yeah, believe in God, and you flip the switch and then it's done, right?
Yeah.
It
No.
doesn't happen like that, right? It's a
Uh,
struggle.
yeah.
It took years usually for somebody to get to the point where they're at. So it's a long struggle to get them back. But there is hope at the end. And God says, you know what? Yeah, you slipped up. I forgive you. You know, and that's an important thing because most of these people can't forgive themselves.
Yeah.
The things they've done, the things they've seen, the things that they can't forgive themselves. And God goes, I will take it. Give it to me. I'll forgive you.
Yeah.
It's okay. You are forgiven. And that is such a powerful, powerful lesson that I wish that every church could really tap into that because there's so many people who are hurting, so many people who feel like they're beyond redemption and they don't realize that God's going, look, it's okay. You can come to me. I will forgive you. I'll forgive you for everything you've done
Yeah.
and give you that healing. And when that happens, then your life begins to change. Then the way you view the world begins to change. You know, it's an amazing thing that happens, you know,
It
and
is.
it's
Yeah.
it's sad that you know that it's like a stigma to talk about, or you know it's sad that like the solution is like it's you know it's religion or whatever, but it's not. Even AA acknowledges it. AA says you have to believe in a higher power. That's literally their number one thing they do, you know.
Oh,
So
wow. That's cool.
there's a reason for that.
Yeah. And the thing is too that it's not only just helping you, but it's saving you from when life is over, you know? Heaven,
Exactly.
heaven is just a heartbeat away, you know what I mean?
Yep.
It's like yeah, it's gonna change you from within, but it's also gonna save your soul from when what happens when you die, you know? So but that's really true. And there's so much miracles in the Bible that talk about people who've struggled with, you know, just certain anger problems, with addiction of certain other things. And then there's also those that have had demons that God, Jesus saved them from, and they
Yep.
were totally changed by that, you know, and
Well, so a story that it isn't in the documentary, but it's somebody that because you know when you start telling these stories, people come to you and they start telling you about their stories. There's one particular guy had an amazing story. He was a bodybuilder
oh,
in high school. He's athletic, successful. He is working out and he has an injury in his back or something. And so he has to take pills and they give him opiates. And he goes from being super successful salesman, super successful everything, and he goes from that to his life getting completely derailed. He loses his job, he loses his marriage, he loses his house, he sells everything, he becomes homeless. The guy is literally living in a crack house with prostitutes.
wow.
And one of his friends comes by and he goes, "Man, you need to get better and will you go with me to Salvation Army?" You know, so he takes him and he goes to the shelter of Salvation Army. Well, this guy goes who's hooked on opiates, obviously very very strongly hooked on opiates. He goes to Salvation Army, and they have a chapel in there, and he goes into the chapel and they sing Amazing Grace.
Oh wow.
And he has never heard the words to Amazing Grace before. And he hears the words to Amazing Grace. And at that moment, his life is transformed. He
Wow.
said from that moment, he never wanted to do drugs again. He became a Christian, obviously. He
Oh,
never wanted to do drugs again. And he became sober. You're talking about a miracle healing. That is a miracle healing. And it was that fast. It was that fast. And to this day, he's sober. He's sober for, I don't know, I think 10 years now.
wow, that's
They
awesome.
have their own restaurant. He's successful. He
Oh,
got
no way.
married. Yeah, he's a great guy. And great Christian. And it's just one of those stories, that because there is a lot of darkness, but there are people who do overcome, and that's important also.
It is. Do you know what's his name?
His name is Robbie. His last name's Brown, I think. Robbie Brown.
Bobby Brown.
Anyway, he's got a man. I probably got his last name wrong, but yeah. But anyway, he has a restaurant. Him and his wife have a restaurant, and it's called Revelations Cafe.
Okay.
Here in Florida.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Yeah.
Because he probably has some YouTube videos on his testimony, right? Or
I think he started writing a book. I think there
oh,
might
he
be a
did.
book about it. But he did a documentary about his restaurant, but it doesn't. I'm not sure it really goes into his testimony. But
Okay, that's good. Well, thank you, Tim, for coming on Rhythm and Roads. I really appreciate your time. But I gotta say, like, I really admire your work. I really do. I think ever since I saw Break Every Chain, you're a fabulous director, writer. I mean, God has really used you, and that's what I inspires me as a potential filmmaker. Is that I'm like I look up to my colleagues, my friends, those that I've interviewed, or just people like you and Brock Heasley and Richard Ramsey. Just I'm like, I'm blessed, God, just for you to let me have the opportunity to interview you guys or just talk to you because I mean, I've seen your work with Break Every Chain and then this new one, 1 second at a time. And it's just like, man, it's amazing. Like your work's great, man. I mean, no, I
I
can
appreciate
understand why you won 64 awards. Like, come on, man.
it.
Like, you know what I mean? And that God's favor on that. Like, come on. Like, it's good, man. And I really appreciate your time, you giving me, to do a second interview with you.
Yeah,
So
so just a plug real quick, 1 second at a time.com. If
okay.
you want to know more about the movie, and it's going to be in theaters. It's select theaters. Actually, they might be out by your neck of the woods. Select theaters in the US, and it'll be in a lot of theaters in Latin America
Really?
in,
Okay.
yeah, September, October, November. We haven't got a firm date yet, but it'll
Okay.
be this fall, I guess.
Oh, oh, nice. Okay. Because I live in Albuquerque now, Rio Rancho area.
Yeah,
Um,
I think I heard that it might be showing at Albuquerque. So
oh,
that's
nice. Okay.
it. Yeah, I'll let you know if it
Yeah, let me
does.
know. Yeah. And is there other websites or anything that you want to address that if people do want to get help, they can go to it, the source of it, or anything?
So yeah, so if you go to 1 second at a time, there's a link there. It'll take you to Christine Ortol Recovery. And
Okay.
that is sorry, Christine Ortol Charity, ChristineOrtolCharity.com. And that is the nonprofit that sponsored the making of the film.
Oh,
And there's a
wow.
lot of resources there. You can get to there from 1second at a time.com. And there's a lot of resources that you can go and read about and get. And we have additional videos. We have a lot of inspirational stories as well. People who have come around who've
Recovered from addiction.
yeah, some really great stories. So I definitely would recommend you, if you want to know more, to check that out.
Okay. Well, sounds good. Well, thank you guys for watching this episode with Tim Searfoss, writer, director, and such a honor just to have him on. I've been such a fan from his work almost a year now. I remember last September we talked about it. So, but yeah, check out his film coming out later this year in the fall, 1 second at a time, select theaters, and go on the website. And if you know anyone that does need the help, please reach out to them and let them know these sources that we have available and that Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life. So, all right, guys. Well, thank you. We'll catch you on the next episode. Thank you, Tim.
Thank you.